A Bond Through Worlds by gjg995. Ludwin was asked by Soma to test Hinata's combat potential. Even at a glance, he could tell that Hinata had a lithe body suitable for combat. He made some small talk with Hinata as they were walking towards the barracks, both out of genuine curiosity and also how she knew how to fight. Apparently, Hinata's father was a former knight from the Grand Chaos Empire before leaving the Knight Force and wanting to travel. He met Hinata's mother after settling north of the kingdom in one of the Union of Eastern Nations. One day, a young Hinata saw her father training with a sword and practically begged him to teach her. He eventually relented, and, seeing how much she absorbed his knowledge, sought to eagerly train her in earnest. Unfortunately, shortly after her 18th birthday, tragedy struck with the monster attacks, and her village was burned to cinders. She fought off as many as she could, but with the monsters, sheer numbers, they had to abandon the small village. However, she fared far better than her older parents, specifically her mother who was suffering from an illness. Refusing to leave her behind, both her and her father fought many of the monsters off before her father forced her to run. Her last memory of them was being killed and eaten by the monsters. Of course, this story was completely fabricated with Hinata talking about Benimaru and the other ogres' demise from her world as if it were her tale. Promising to make it up to her brother and sister-in-law, they arrived at the training room. Ludwin quickly apologized for making her remember such a memory, but Hinata dismissed it, saying that she was here to fight, not to reminisce. While Aisha and Lissa looked slightly uncomfortable at this, they elected to say nothing. Showing her the array of training weapons, Hinata found herself quite at home due to the European style of weaponry. Choosing a straight sword that she has found plenty of comfort in the past, she walked to the arena and was met with Ludwin holding a broadsword. "Are you certain you don't want a shield?" Ludwin was worried that blocking a broadsword with just a straight sword would put her in a disadvantage, but she insisted. "I feel the most comfortable with just a straight sword." "Right then. As far as the rules go, no magic. As much as I wish to know your full capabilities, if you fight with your lightning affinity, there is a good chance one of us might get seriously injured or die. Is this acceptable?" "Yes." "Good. Whenever you are ready, come and attack me." Ludwin held his sword in a battle-ready stance, and both were wearing leather armor that could defend against the training weapons. A clean hit would still hurt, but not kill. More importantly, Hinata could see that the test had already begun. In monster attacks, the normal course of action would be to defend. Defense was far easier than attacking, and letting mindless monsters attack with no strategy in place was usually fairly easy to defend as long as you had the proper personnel and equipment, as you could just react to the other person's attacks. What Ludwin wanted to test from her was how well she would be at attacking. The kingdom expects a war soon and plans to be on the attacking side, so someone who didn't know how to initiate a battle was going to be a hindrance to them. Without hesitation, she ran to the man with her sword at her shoulder, ready to thrust. Ludwin was prepared to sidestep this, but she quickly turned her thrust into a diagonal slash which he blocked. He countered with a sweep of his sword, but she closed the gap so that even if it did connect, he would only be hitting her with the hilt. Realizing that she has proper combat experience, he took this more seriously. Stopping his sweep midway while retreating, he was able to parry her slash in the nick of time. She gave him no breathing room, however, and continued her assault. The spectators watched the dance of blades between the two and were seeing that Hinata was putting far more pressure than either Lissa or Aisha anticipated on one of the best fighters in the country. Additionally, she was skillfully moving around the range of Ludwin's strikes so as to not cause any more wear and tear on her blade. This awakened the battle-hungry nature in both Aisha and Lissa, who were eagerly awaiting the end of their spar. This woman trained in a village. Almost 3 minutes in, and Ludwin had barely been given room to counterattack. He was honestly stunned at development, as even against Lissa, their spars had usually ended either in a tie or with one of them winning, and just barely at that. If we were using magic, the outcome would be even more one-sided. The main reason as to why he requested that they not use magic is because those born with the lightning affinity often had many troubles when it came to using their magic. The primary reason was that it was extremely hard to train in a safe environment since those just starting to use magic often had very poor control over it. Elemental magic was completely indiscriminate in what it affected, but lightning had a propensity to go towards anything metallic without proper guidance, which meant that to train, you needed to go somewhere with no metal and wouldn't burn down. On top of that, since the speed of lightning is incredibly fast, it was difficult to adjust where you wanted it to go since you would only see the afterimage. While lightning could certainly be an absolute nightmare in the battlefield to deal with since many soldiers both wore and wielded metal armor and weapons, very few people have ever had the displeasure of dealing with lightning mages, and so everyone just assumes that, since no one wants to bother training those with the lightning affinity, it was not something they had to deal with. Most people with the lightning affinity simply used it to start fires in their fireplace and use an incredibly low power for a light source in a pinch. Eventually, a little after the 3.5 minute mark, Ludwin decided that she was more than capable of joining the army. Do pardon me for doubting your capabilities, Madam Hinata. You are more than qualified to join the army. Do you have a specific branch in mind? If not, I can recommend the Royal Guard. We're always looking for more people, and if you show aptitude in leading, I can guarantee you a high position. I am humbled. I accept your. Before Hinata was able to accept Ludwin's proposal, Lissa suddenly blurted out, wait. How about you become a bodyguard like Aisha? Ludwin was shocked at the proposal, and looking at Lissa, he could quickly understand why. She has always been a tomboy, and part of the reason for this was her slight battle junkie nature. She simply wanted her to be a bodyguard so that she would have another convenient training partner, this time in terms of excelling skill, unlike Aisha, who is more along the lines of brute force. It is true that Hinata would be more than capable of being an excellent bodyguard in terms of skill, but to Ludwin, it was quite clear that her only goal was to kill as many monsters as possible. He didn't think she would be as loyal to her guard as Aisha is to Soma. Princess, I know her skill is incredible, but I believe military service is better suited for her. Shouldn't you let the woman in question decide that? Besides, didn't Soma state that he would listen to any request of the gifted ones? Lissa then turned towards Hinata. If you join the military, 90% of your time there will be cleaning or doing something boring other than fighting. Even if you are one of the higher UPS, your day is still spent planning strategies and dealing with the soldiers beneath you. If you're a bodyguard, you don't need to deal with any of that. So, what do you say? Lissa looked at her with excitement and a slight bit of desperation. Hinata internally sighed knowing that she will most likely have to spar with the princess if her battle-hungry look was anything to go off of, but this was the best possible development she could have hoped for. Hinata made a show of thinking about her options before she walked up to Lissa. Princess Lissa, I wish to serve as your bodyguard. Will you accept me? She really knows how to put on an act. Less than of course, unlike someone I know. Calculations show that she will reject and ask her to serve one of you. Greater than. Ah, that's good. As if proving Seal right, Lissa responded with a hand on the back of her head. Ahaha, I don't really need a bodyguard since I have the Royal Knights protecting me at all times. Perhaps you can serve one of the other summoned heroes. Hinata looked at the two of them, awaiting a response. I almost feel bad taking such a beautiful woman for myself. Though I have no intention of fighting the demons anytime soon, if you wish to serve me, I will accept, Madam Hinata. You're enjoying this way too much, aren't you? My dear, whatever could you mean? More importantly, I'm waiting for your answer, Hinata-kun. Opening square bracket ... You can be so annoying sometimes. Dear oh dear, well you can always say no. Hinata mentally sighed before accepting Rimuru's proposal. They both knew that Lissa had practically handed them the perfect situation for being together, yet he chose to let his mischievous side out this time out of all times. I'm getting you back for this. Oh, are you going to stab me again? Hinata gave a devilishly slight smirk. I think I'll ask for CL's help in disciplining you tonight. Less than I'll be looking forward to it. Greater than. Rimuru paled at this. Since Seal had complete control over his body, she often did things such as increase his sensitivity and completely deprive his sense of sight. Though he could always tell her not to do it any longer and she'd oblige, for some reason or another he has never thought to ask. With that out of the way, Hinata received another challenge, this time from Aisha. Fortunately, before Hinata could accept the challenge, a soldier came into the arena explaining that the king wanted to see them. As they were escorted into the government office, they met up with Soma and Hakuya. He and Lissa could only sigh as, despite trying ever since her parents left the castle to go back to Albert's domain in the countryside, Soma has refused to move into the king's bedroom. Hell, his bed was next to his desk so that right when he woke up, the work was right there, ready for him. It slightly disturbed the maids somewhat, seeing that they had better living conditions than the person they served. Ah good, you're all here. Just wait a bit for Pancho to come and we'll start. Soma, apparently, wasted little to no time regarding his plans. When Pancho came in, Soma gave him a task to immediately resolve the food situation. He was told to go to every place both in and outside of the country with a wyvern and gather food that was not common cuisine for most of the people of Elfrieden. When he asked how he would carry this, Soma handed him a bag and explained that it was imbued with an extremely rare kind of magic called special magic. When Lissa heard of this, she was outraged that they'd use a one-of-a-kind treasure like this, but Soma kept up with his, "we need to use every resource available" mentality. Pancho was set to leave tomorrow, but as he did not have anything major to prepare for his departure, he was ready to go as soon as the wyvern was prepared with the knight accompanying it. He was the key proponent to Soma's plans to deal with the food problem, so until he got back, Soma would be working on other issues that were on the back burner. The next thing Soma wanted to tackle was the immediate natural threat to the Dark Elves. The ones who would be sent on this excursion would be Aisha, Hinata, and Testarossa. Though travel to and from the god-protected forest was usually 3 days each way, this was done at a leisurely pace and was normally through plenty of rest stops. With a fast horse and a bit of luck, a round trip could be done in as little as 2 full days and nights. Aisha initially protested about not being able to guard him at all times. Soma assuaged her doubts by saying that Lissa would be by his side, and that he would effectively be a shut-in until at the very least Pancho returned. The next thing on his list was the creation of an aqueduct and sewer system. Both he and Rimuru had been talking about how to best manage a proper sanitary system, as it was undoubtedly the best way to combat diseases. Though many farmers could make use of manure from both their horses, and in rare cases, themselves, the common folk couldn't. There wasn't a designated place to dump it, so most just put it in a wastebasket and dumped it far enough away so that the smell didn't bother anyone. This was obviously less than ideal, so with a water and sewage system making use of the old catacombs underneath the castle whose only purpose right now seemed to be gathering dust, Rimuru, Ludwin, and the royal army were tasked with bringing in water from a nearby big river and expanding on said catacombs throughout the immediate castle town. Eventually, he wanted to go through with the entire country, but small steps first. If a pandemic happened right at their doorstep, they were virtually powerless to do anything but let it run its course. Though Soma was initially reluctant to accept Rimuru recommending himself for the job, considering that Rimuru used to be a general contractor, he figured that it would be extremely beneficial for him to join the royal army to tell them where to make entry and exit ways. He was initially suspicious of him trying to skirt out of doing any more paperwork, but the androgynous man drove a hard bargain. Finally, with that settled, all that was left was for Soma, Lissa and Hakuya to plan on the inevitable upcoming war, and in the worst possible outcome, the upcoming civil war. Their discussion didn't get extremely far, however, as night was approaching very quickly, but Hakuya came up with an objectively cruel, yet efficient plan to root out the corruption from the kingdom. Soma had some apprehensions about implementing such a plan so quickly, so he put it on the list of things he wanted to seek more counsel on. Around the same time the three were finishing up their meeting, a different group of 3 were finishing up dinner and closing in on their rooms. Hinata, now officially a guard to Rimuru, was able to stay in the castle. Though she technically had a room to herself near Aisha's as a bodyguard, she wagered that she wouldn't be using it most nights. As they drew closer, the door opened to what would be one of Testa's most memorable nights. Rimuru woke up the next morning feeling very refreshed. To his right was Testa, who was nestled in between the crook of his neck and shoulder, and Seal, who had now moved her face next to his. Looking to his left, he saw Seal open her eyes, and he smiled and just stared into them. This form of intimacy was something that he deeply enjoyed with members of his harem, and usually after a night of passion, would just stare deep into each other's eyes for the better part of an hour. Looking into his eyes for the better part of a couple minutes, she broke both eye contact and the silence by looking over at the sleeping Testa. Less than she will be a fine one to break in. Greater than. Rimuru rolled his eyes at the comment from his eternal companion that was acting more and more like a licentious old man. He'd wanted to continue the intimate moment, but it seemed she had other plans. I'm not breaking in anyone. I just wanted to pleasure her and went a little overboard. Less than. It's adorable that you think you can trick me, master. I know how much you loved reading those hentai where the man makes the woman a slave to pleasure. Greater than. Rimuru cringed at the comment. It was yet more information that he naively thought was true about S3X and was proven wrong about. In fact, bringing such a sublime amount of pleasure to a woman was one of the things that led to his experimentation with the qualities of his body. Though looking his latest S3 Shual escapade, it was hard to say that he hadn't achieved that. No, definitely not a slave to pleasure. More like a strong, desire, wait, what the hell am I saying? Less than foo-foo. Speaking of breaking someone, you should absorb your other self and get the memories of last night between me and Hinata. Greater than. He was kind of dreading gaining those memories so early in the day. Linking up with his other self, he found him sleeping comfortably in Hinata's bosom. Though the occasional involuntary twitch his legs did worry him a bit. Quote. Seal, how long? She sighed a bit. Less than we were only able to do it for 5.5 hours before Hinata wanted to get some sleep. Greater than. Quote. How many? Less than 6 times. I think you will enjoy the memories of the last couple ones. Greater than. He faced the manas with a look of reluctant acceptance. Seal, sensing that he would enter into a funky mood, quickly put a stop to it. Cradling his face with her hands, she smiled and said in a soft, resolved voice, less than I acted in the way I thought best. I love you eternally and promise to never greater than. Rimuru brought his hand up to stop her. Seal, I trust you with my everything. Even though it may have been a bit excessive, I have no doubt you know what's best for me. Never apologize for taking action on that behalf. When he said that, the intimate mood immediately came back, and he realized that this was probably what she was aiming for. You really do know everything about me. Seal responded with a loving smile and a kiss before informing him that the sun had just peaked over the horizon. Losing the warmth of her body in favor of her returning into him, he took a few seconds to look at the ceiling with a silly smile on his face before turning to look at the remaining beauty next to him. He took one last good look at Testa's sleeping face before he kissed her awake. After a couple of kisses from him, she lightly groaned awake and opened her eyes to see her lord and now lover smiling back at her. In response, she put her head back into his neck and hugged him tighter with the strength she could manage. When it was clear that she wasn't going to let him go, he finally said, come on. The sun is rising. We should be getting up now. She groaned in response. Why did they have to get up? Can't the kingdom actually be useful for once and solve their own damn problems? Besides, didn't Rimuru say that she could be selfish? Rimuru started to lightly shake her, and she groaned louder in response. Come on. Get up. No, she really didn't want to get up from the comfort of the bed. It was currently the most daunting task ahead of her. A primordial being who has fought countless beings, hell, even fought a true dragon, was currently having her most difficult challenge in the form of simply getting out of bed. The reason for this was simple. Warm bed equals good, cold equals bad. She would if she was ordered to. If her lord was heartless enough to issue such an order, she would. She definitely wouldn't be angry about it. Not at all. Hoping to get the clingy demon off him without resorting to anything drastic, he started poking her sides. Testa smiled and twitched in response and immediately noticed the soreness that came from moving her leg and stomach muscles. Though she wanted to use this as an excuse to stay in bed longer, she also wanted to know why she was so sore. After all, they only had S3X for 30 minutes tops, at least from what she could remember. It should be nowhere near as physically exerting as some of the fights she has previously been in. Remembering that all her nullifications were completely dormant, she finally released him from her arms, albeit very reluctantly, and, with sheer determination and willpower, she moved to a seated position. Even that action was sore. Before she healed herself and removed any of the evidence of last night, she briefly examined herself and her eyes widened at what she saw. Bite marks on her breasts, plenty of hickeys all around her chest and upper back that left bruises, and the thing that took the cake was a much fiercer bite mark right between her neck and right ear. Looking behind her at the pillow, she saw that it must have drawn blood as there was a bloodstain left there. She looked at Rimuru, who looked back at her with a smile and a look of concern in his eyes. Really? Such a worrywart. Proving that her words last night weren't just for show, she got out of bed on shaky legs, and got some decent underwear that she could use in lieu of created ones. Now that she saw the damage from last night, she was going to let her body heal itself naturally rather than using skills unless ordered to. Especially since she was marked. The more she moved around and got her clothes on, making sure to let Rimuru enjoy each action by putting them on slowly, the more the oddly pleasant soreness permeated her body and the giddier she got with every movement. Finally finished dressing herself, she looked back at him and asked, enjoy the show? Almost too much. You okay showing that mark off? Testa had gathered all her hair and used a hair tie at the end of it, showing off the bite mark on her neck. She looked at him with slightly pleading eyes. Do you not want me to? Rimuru replied by snaking his arms around her waist and giving her a deep kiss. Let's go. We don't want to keep the others waiting too long. Leaving the room, they walked hand in hand to Hinata's room to pick her up. When they got there, they found her dressed and ready along with another Rimuru in his slime form. They greeted each other and Hinata gave Testa a knowing smirk when she saw the mark on her. Here you go, dear. Your gift, fully prepared and ready for you. We worked extra hard to make sure you'd enjoy it. Both Rimurus mentally sighed at this, with human Rimuru stealing himself and absorbing his slime self. Both girls saw him clench his muscles for a couple seconds before relaxing and turning back to them. Once there's a lull, I'm getting you back. Hinata grinned. Oh, I look forward to it. Hinata was the type of woman who enjoyed the so-called battle for domination. She would of course enjoy the more intimate parts of S3X when it came up in their life, but when it came to the more carnal aspects of it, she wouldn't go down without a fight. Though she would always end up on the receiving end, to her it just made things that much more pleasurable. Giving a quick peck on the lips to her, he grabbed Testa's hand again and set off for the stables with Hinata following behind, much how a guard should. The castle was still waking up for the morning, but for the few maids that were up, the woman that was quietly being regarded as the Ice Queen had that image shattered by a very bubbly-looking woman holding hands with the other summoned one. What was more, seeing the clear mark on her neck, while extremely bold, was enough to signify that she already belonged to someone. Every maid they walked by had the same thought. She's lucky. Before Soma took the throne, all castle maids were almost immediately dismissed once it was found out that they were pregnant. If they wanted to have a baby, they would have to leave the castle to give birth and then begin the whole process of trying to get a job as a maid again. One of the first things Soma did when he came to office was to introduce the concept of maternity leave for the maids to allow them to be able to both raise a family and serve the castle. As such, many of the maids were starting to pursue love interests with those in the castle, primarily the butlers, guards, and the soldiers, along with the occasional minister. When they got there, Aisha was already waiting for them and was preparing the horses. When she looked at the trio, she saw the two summoned ones holding hands and was about to greet them before noticing the clear bite mark on Testa's neck. Though she had a guess as to what they were up to last night, she knew better than to ask, even as her thoughts went to the direction of her own relationships. I wonder when His Highness will take me like that. Greeting the three, she was going to take 3 horses before Testa requested to only take 2, as she would ride with Hinata. As soon as the horses were prepared, Rimuru helped Testa on the one with Hinata and Aisha got on her own. Are you sure you'll be okay riding? She hugged Hinata slightly stronger in response and focused on her breathing. No, but I'll manage. With that out of the way, Hinata gave the signal to Aisha that they were ready, and they were on their way to the forest with Rimuru seeing them off. After waiting for about half a minute, he then walked back to the castle and asked one of the maids to lead him to where Ludwin was. When he arrived at the barracks, he saw a crew of around 50 or so soldiers along with Ludwin, all wearing light armor over normal clothes, and an unknown fox-like girl wearing an outfit he can only describe as a mage's outfit. She had short golden hair down to her shoulders, light orange eyes, kitsune ears and a golden tail, and was wearing a green high-class military outfit adorned with medals, signifying a high position in the army. Ah, Rimuru, I'm glad you are up so early. We were just doing some light exercises. I can see that. By the way, he said, addressing the unknown woman, are you joining us? We are going into the catacombs, so that might not be the best attire. The woman looked at him and bowed. Hello, Sir Rimuru, it's a pleasure to meet you. I am Kaide Foxia, the Royal Army's best earth mage. I am here to ensure easier passage with my magic. As for my attire, I wear this as my pride as long as I am working. Such a serious girl. So even the name is Japanese too, huh? Hello Kaide. You can drop the honorifics with me. I'm glad to have your help with this. By the way, where exactly is the entrance to the catacombs? Ludwin answered his query. There are multiple entrances. The one we will be using is about 3 kilometers from here, as it's closest to the river. I will warn you, however, that there might be monsters. I may not look it, but I can take care of myself. Are we leaving anytime soon? Well, we were planning a little later to give you some time to rest, but since you are up, we can leave now. Does that work for you? Rimuru nodded in affirmation, and they set off. As they were walking to the entrance, he talked a little more to Kaide. Where are you from? The name Kaide is a familiar name where I used to live. She gave a wry smile at his last words, but answered, my family are descendants from the 9-headed dragon archipelago. As we are a member of the mystic fox race, the humans drove us away, but when the Harrowking united Elfrieden together and promoted racial hegemony, our ancestors migrated back to the kingdom. Rimuru hummed in interest before a great idea popped in his head. It was a long shot, but there was no harm in asking. Kaide, are you familiar with a katana? She was slightly taken aback by the enthusiasm of the man, and she couldn't help but let out a faint blush when she saw the stars in his eyes. You mean the ones with the curved blades? Yes, I'm familiar with them. Wah. He suddenly grabbed her hands. Can you get one for me? This was extremely important to him in order to fight. Okay, not really, but since he wanted to partake in a couple of spars in the upcoming war, he would need a weapon, and better one that he was familiar with than one that didn't feel right. He could certainly use it well enough, but it didn't feel the same. On top of that, even the weakest katanas he could make through his skill was far stronger than the best of weapons this world had to offer. The unfortunate thing was that Elfrieden seemed to match Middle-Age Europe in most things, and this also included weaponry. While this suited Hinata quite well, it wouldn't work for him. Though there were some katanas that made their way to the kingdom from the archipelago, they were both very uncommon and incredibly expensive, and Soma wouldn't budge when he asked to spend money on it. In fact, he distinctly remembered him saying something like, "Go ask one of the nobles for it. I'm sure you could charm one of them and have them get you one." Cheeky little shit was growing some backbone against him. Unfortunately, his hopes were soon dashed when Kaide responded. Unfortunately, I cannot. She saw him look like he lost his soulmate, and she suddenly felt extremely guilty. But wait, if you know how to make one, the blacksmiths would be more than willing to work with you. They are always looking for a challenge. Seeing Rimuru light back up again as if the previous expression was just a dream, she looked away to save herself from another blush, already being put through an emotional rollercoaster that she didn't think was possible just from a few interactions with someone who was practically a stranger. Thankfully, he let go of her hands, probably due to Ludwin patting his arm, and continued to walk forward. It seemed that Rimuru, for his part, didn't seem at all fazed from some of the glares he got from the other soldiers. Being one of the few women in the army, along with being the only one with fox-like traits, she garnered a lot of attention for herself as someone to both admire and pine for in the after-hours. Unfortunately for them, she had her heart set for another. As they got to the site, Ludwin took command while Rimuru advised him where best to put the passageways for the aqueducts and the sewers. The treatment for the sewage water was set to be away from both the river and the citizens, so that would come first. Not even 15 minutes after they started digging, they heard another sound in the catacombs. The soldiers were getting their battle gear ready as it seemed like they were going to fight. What came up was a lizardman who saw them before running directly in the other direction, seeing the people primed to kill it. Lizardfolk, unlike in Tempest, were mindless creatures who were seen as monsters due to their desire to eat anything, including sentient beings. We shouldn't let that thing get away, one of the soldiers said. Knocking an arrow, one of the soldiers let it loose and killed the fleeing lizardman with a shot to the head. Disposing the corpse with fire magic to prevent infestation, they continued along with their job, killing the occasional monster and making headway. A couple hours in, they saw something that was an archaeologist's wet dream. In the site was a plethora of monster bones and dragon bones that seemed undiscovered if not for the head of one of the dragons missing. Everyone was looking at the gigantic skeletons with awe. I wonder how long these have been here. Kaide muttered. I would guess a few thousand years. She looked at Rimuru like he was insane. So, you mean to tell me that dragons and monstrous beasts were just sitting underground for all this time? How many more are there? He laughed and explained the process of how erosion works and how fossils often find their way deep within the earth. These things were roaming the planet at one point. Most likely. Though I would guess you probably don't have to worry about them anymore. At least not outside of the country of dragon riders. She knew what Rimuru was referring to. A place to the northwest of Elfrieden was called the Star Dragon Mountain Range and had a population of only dragons. All of these dragons were of the sentient kind and could therefore be reasoned with, and the country next to it took advantage of this and made contracts with these dragons. Normally, dragons would not allow any to ride it, but if it was the person they made a pact with, they would allow it. This gave the country, called Nuthung Dragon Knight Kingdom, immense war power as air superiority mattered above all else, and dragons were the king of the sky. To prevent the people and the dragons from completely taking over the world, there was an exponentially more powerful dragon, called Mother Dragon to the natives, Tiamat to those outside of the range, who oversaw what the dragons were doing. If they were too far out of line, she would initially give a warning, and if the behavior continued, she would forcefully cancel the pact and imprison the offending dragon for a long period of time. However, she would only act when it concerned her dragons. Any other conflict within the world of Io, regardless of what it was, she would not interfere in. Well, in any case, we should tell His Majesty about this. Ludwin. She turned to look at Ludwin, who was looking at the only skeleton missing a head and giving an exasperated sigh. Neither of them knew what the man was thinking, but they could guess that he knew something regarding the dragon's missing head. Right. I will send one of the soldiers to tell His Majesty after we are done here. For now, let's continue our work. As they pressed on, another group of women was taking their first break. Since they prioritized time over leisure and wanted to make a round trip in 4 days, the horses were going at a gallop. Not incredibly fast, but enough to go plenty of distance in a few hours. Currently, they were letting their horses drink water while Aisha was feeding them from her knapsack. This would at least be enough until she was able to restock at the next inn, which she knew was about 100 kilometers away. At the pace they were going, they would be able to reach it by nightfall. Though they hadn't talked much, Aisha wanted to get to know the two women better. Madam Hinata, may I ask why you did not choose to go into the military? You can drop the honorifics when talking to me. The only reason why is because the princess told me that I would be spending most of my time cleaning, maintaining, and sparring. At least as a bodyguard under the two summoned heroes, I won't be doing that. I see. I have another question, but feel free not to answer it. Go for it. Why did you choose to come to Elfrieden and not stay within one of the eastern nations? You would have fought far more demons there than here, right? Hinata sighed at this, buying time to think up a good excuse. When I saw my parents die, I was completely lost. I did throw myself into killing as many monsters as I could, but it felt literally endless. I stayed in the Duchy of Chima for a little while, which borders the domain, but all I was doing was just defending, not attacking. Since no one wanted to spearhead another expedition, I decided to go south in the hopes of finding someone that will. Looking up at the sky, she continued. I was originally planning on only staying here for a couple of months, especially with the food shortage going on, but then I heard about the summoned hero and the king's summon for talent. I showed up with the hopes that he could grant my wish of spearheading an attack on the domain. Though the more I stay in this country, the more I enjoy it. She looked back at Aisha. I'm sure Soma will eventually go into the domain, but as of right now, I oddly feel no rush to go plunging back into it. Aisha took in every word and thanked the heavens that she lives in Elfrieden. They simply didn't have to worry about any sort of attack from the domain. It almost felt wrong to complain about her situation when hearing about Hinata's. Trying to brighten up the mood a little, Aisha was about to ask for a spar before she heard a sound from one of the surrounding shrubberies. Once she saw both Testa and Hinata on their guard, she looked over at where the sound was and loudly proclaimed, "We know you are there. Show yourselves." TCH. Guess we got found out. Out from the trees, 8 men came into view and started fanning out towards them, seemingly blocking their escape. They were each carrying weapons and, while their gear was decent enough, the 3 of them could see that it was stolen, judging by how it wasn't completely fitted. That, along with the malicious smiles they were giving, clearly indicated that they were up to no good. State your business. Hinata rolled her eyes. What do you think their business is? They're here to rob and rape us. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Don't be putting words in our mouths, little missus. We only want your money and your horses. Though, he smirked, we'll let you keep the horses if you pay with your bodies. They gave a chuckle at this. Aisha looked at him with disgust, while both Hinata and Testa, oddly enough, started sporting sadistic smiles. The man took note of this and thought that they were just bluffing. Tell you what, since there are 2 horses, you ladies can pick and choose which 2 of you pay. Do you have any idea who we are? This is. She was interrupted by both Hinata and Testa using magic. Hinata quickly electrified 4 of them while Testa used magic to send blades of ice and chop off the feet of the other 4. Hinata's victim simply passed out while Testa's victim screamed in pain. Aisha was shocked at this. Not because of Hinata's actions, but rather Testa's actions. She didn't think that a summoned hero would be able to be so ruthless. But the biggest reason. I wanted to fight too. Snapping herself out of her thoughts, she was about to thank the 2 of them for incapacitating them before she saw Hinata walk towards them, raising her blade. Wait, we need to find out who they are with. Hinata sighed and looked at her. They're bandits. Unless you think you can get the location of the bandit lord out of them, they're useless to us. Besides, even if we have that, we can't afford to make a detour. But killing them, they already don't pose a threat. Well, I mean, 4 of them are going to bleed out anyway. Might as well put them out of their misery. Aisha looked conflicted at this but couldn't come up with a better alternative to the cold logic Hinata gave. She wasn't a stranger to bandit attacks, but each and every time, she tried her best not to kill them as she believed that they always had a reason to attack. As for these people, even if they carried them to an apothecary, they would most likely bleed out on the way, even with a proper tourniquet. And that was assuming they agreed to be helped. With no better options, Hinata took out her blade again and mechanically stabbed them through their hearts despite their cries, and one by one, silence slowly returned to the area. The horses finished drinking water around this time, somehow unaffected by the surrounding skirmish, and were ready to continue. They wordlessly got on their horses and kept moving forward. You overdid it, Era, Hinata, but their souls taste so delicious. I thought demons liked pure souls. Correct. While we do like all kinds, the most delicious kinds are the ones laden with sin. Whatever. Just make sure you don't kill anyone else unless it's necessary. She looked over at Aisha. She already is thinking that something is wrong with us for how easy it was to take their lives, and the last thing we need is negative attention, especially directed towards Rimuru. Testa seemed to have sobered up from the killing. Yes, of course. Forgive me. It's just that, there didn't seem to be a good reason to let them live. Hinata nodded at this, and they continued forward in relative silence. Perhaps if the bandits didn't look the way they did, Testa would have settled with incapacitating them. After all, Rimuru had told her to consider the other side, but the bandits looked like the word, famine, was foreign to them, especially with how built they looked, which was a stark contrast to the people around the area who all looked at least slightly malnourished. She judged that killing the bandits would net the most possible good. Surprisingly, that was the primary reason she killed them. Unless words were said to slander her lord or occasionally herself, she paid no mind to them when they were said by people clearly weaker than her. She simply saw the action as a net positive for her and for the surrounding society. Eventually, after several hours worth more of riding and taking short breaks, they reached their destination and checked into the inn.